I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 303 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. 3 things I learned from the Barbie movie. So yes, my friends, we are going to talk about Barbie today. I saw the Barbie movie with my oldest daughter just a couple of days ago, and my other children saw it with other people. I am so glad that my oldest daughter, who is off to college imminently here, was willing to go to this and wear pink with me and see it in an old time theater, kind of one that reminded me of like where Daddy Warbucks took Annie in the movie. I loved the vibe of this theater. I was more than ready to see this film by the time I got there because my team had been talking to me about it. Some of our clients had been talking to me about it. And the whole world has been talking about this movie. So I was definitely more than ready to go in with an open mind and see what all of the hype was about. And it was so interesting to watch my reaction and hers as the opening scene unfolded and some of the, imagery that was used early in the Barbie world set started to be revealed, right? We had heard a lot about it. It was really an entirely different thing to see it on screen. So before I say another word, I want to say there are definitely spoilers in this episode. I don't know how to deliver this without sharing some of the detail from the movie. So if that is something you're trying to save for when you see it, you might want to come back and catch this one later. If you're like, that's cool, I'm okay with a few spoilers. I think the premise of this movie has been pretty well publicized, so I don't think there's anything here that will really blow it for you if you catch this before you go to see the movie. So I definitely kind of started off thinking, oh, this is pretty over the top, right? Just watching the dream house brought to life or the dream car, but also remembering when those were toys in my childhood home. I had the dream house. I also had the townhouse, definitely had that Corvette, the pink Corvette. I think I also had a silver one at some point. And watching all of Margot Robbie's wardrobe, like the vintage Chanel collection that was on full display in this, was just mind-blowing, right? Watching the costuming and the set design, particularly in Barbie World, was so, it was just a romp, right? Super fun to watch that. And then I groaned right along with the rest of the theater at some of the moments like when her feet stayed in the high-heeled position even after she took her shoes off, or when she had her first run-in with the construction crew in the real world. So I'll admit that at first I wasn't so sure where I was going to shake out on this movie. If you take the plot line at face value, it was maybe a little underwhelming, right? But I think that the movie works on multiple levels. And when I started to reflect on the movie, first with my daughter and then with some of my colleagues, more sort of book club style, like really unpacking what was going on in this entire piece, Greta Gerwig's genius became more apparent to me than ever. Like I just couldn't believe how many different levels this movie really worked on. And I don't know that I expected that. The layers and layers of meaning and nuance that had been stacked into this movie. So I want to talk about a few today. Maybe you caught all of these. Maybe some of these will give you a slightly different nuance or lens onto the experience. And I would really love to hear from you with yours. If you kind of want to participate in my Barbie book club here and you have your own reflections on the movie, definitely hit me up with a DM or respond back when our, the weekly comes out that has this episode in it. If you get that, I would love to hear from you with your own take on this movie. So I'm going to share a few things with you today that I took away upon further reflection. I'm not sure that they all hit me immediately when I was watching the movie, but again, as I started unpacking it, these layers of insight started to reveal themselves. And sometimes I'll say this to our clients or my team, like I am very much a verbal processor. And so by talking about these ideas and my observations out loud with some people, I think they started to take shape. So it's taken me a little bit to pull this episode together as I've processed through some of the reflections that I have. Okay, here we go. The first one that was pretty clear to me is that Barbie's evolution seems to mirror our own. Like over the course of a lifetime, if I look at her evolution as a doll and what she stands for over time, it seems to mirror our own journey as women over time. The first phase of it, like when the doll was created and when we were first introduced to it, I mean, back in the day when I was first introduced to it, I think Barbie was really all about what she looked like, right? In the early stages of the doll, it was all about what the doll looked like, what the doll wore. And so too with us in our teens or our 20s, kind of that early chapter of life. It's very, very much about what do we look like? That's what we're paying attention to. And then, of course, at some point in the evolution of Barbie, Mattel gets this wake-up call and realizes that they need to pivot. It was around about 2014, so well after I was done playing with Barbies. And they started to focus on what Barbie could do. So the era in which my children were introduced to Barbies really overlaps with this era where the whole brand becomes about what can this woman do? Kind of a you can be anything you want to be era for Barbie. And I think that mirrors our early adulthood. This is how we spend our 30s and 40s, right? Barbie can be a doctor. She can be president. She can be a scientist. She can be apparently a game show host, a chef, a veterinarian. And we were laughing as a team about some of these Barbies that we had when we were growing up or ones that we bought for our children. I vividly remember buying my sister-in-law's children a Barbie architect because my sister-in-law is an architect. Like it was really intriguing to us that we were now focused on, it felt like such progress to move beyond what does Barbie look like, right? And into what she can do, what professional career she can have. But there was a third evolution of Barbie in the movie, and that is the evolution to who we are, right? So we're focused on what we look like, what we do, and ultimately who we are. And this, I think, is the journey of our 40s and 50s and beyond, the journey that I am often intersecting with women during. So America Ferrera delivered an extraordinary monologue during this movie. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who wrote the monologue. I would love to give that individual or team credit because this monologue was terrific. And it really echoes things that I have been saying for years. It has gone viral. You have most certainly seen pieces of this monologue. I'm going to read a little bit of it. It's the one that says, we're describing in this monologue the expectations placed on women. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. And she goes on and on and on, and she ends with, and it turns out that in fact, not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault, right? I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself in knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll, just representing women, then I don't even know. And at this point, the theater is kind of silent or maybe even a little teary. And there's so much collective wisdom delivered in that monologue. And it wasn't even my favorite line. My favorite line was this one, when Barbie says, I want to do the imagining, not be the idea. I want to be a part of the people that make meaning, not be the thing that they make. I mean, wow. To me, this is really the piece of the movie in which she is very clear that this is not about becoming the idealized version of someone else's vision for her. And I think about how often we do that, how often we are trying to become the quintessential version of someone else's vision for who we are supposed to be, instead of our own, instead of imagining our own. We don't really want to fit in the box. Maybe that's why Barbie is in the box. In fact, in the real world, in the movie, Will Ferrell's character wants to put her back in the box, which I think is a giant metaphor, right? Like, we can't let her be running around here in the real world being who she wants to be. Quickly get her back in the box. And how often are we invited or forced back in the box when we get a little too far out of line? So that, to me, just full stop, most powerful kind of moment in the movie was, I want to do the imagining, not be the idea. I want to be a part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that they make. The ability to have a level of agency and control over the way we shape our very lives feels like it's sitting at the epicenter of this movie. And that's that third phase, as we've moved out of an obsession with what we look like and the obsessions with what we do. We have the opportunity to really grapple with who we are and how we want to move through our lives in the real world. Hi, it's Cheryl Ann. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. And as we do that, we kind of get to my second big takeaway from the movie, which is that guides matter. So it's no surprise, if you've ever studied story and movie, that most movies follow the hero's journey in some way. You've probably heard this. And clearly, we have a few guides at play. Heroes often have a guide who helps them on their developmental arc throughout the movie. And there are 3 guides who show up for Barbie. The first one, I am such a Kate McKinnon fan, y'all. Kate McKinnon plays this character called Weird Barbie. And the kind of inside joke is, we all had one, right? It's the one you played with too hard and her hair got weird and you just kept her around, but she was kind of weird Barbie. Sometimes I think if I think about my childhood friends' homes, it's like she was headless, or she was missing an arm, or her hair had been fried off or colored. Somebody used a curling iron on plastic hair, or it got dyed a different color. So weird Barbie. When Barbie was first worried about some of the unusual thoughts she was having about death, for example, or unusual experiences, God forbid her feet were becoming more flat, or she had cellulite emerging, she got her version of a ruby slipper in the form of a Birkenstock sandal. And she was off to the real world to go make things right? To get herself back on track as the stereotypical Barbie that she was meant to be. That guide sets her off on her journey, but while there, she meets her second guide. And this is America Ferrera's character, who delivered that exceptional monologue. Her name's Gloria, and she's a Mattel employee. And she's the one who helps Barbie see the impossibility of the tightrope that she was being asked to walk, right? She's the one who's explaining, wait a minute, you think you want to kind of take a look at how things are in the real world, but this is not the ideal that we want to be following. Like, we haven't figured it out over here yet. Look at what we've constructed under the patriarchy. So she reveals she's kind of the character who introduces Barbie to her next nemesis, right? The patriarchy, and to the implications of that. And then the third guide is introduced in the form of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie. So Ruth plays that sort of godlike character in being Barbie's creator, who is the one who finally reminds her that her only job is to be who she is. After all, it is much easier to face the real world when we are clear about who we are, right? When we're putting ourselves into some kind of costume or suit or forcing ourselves into someone else's vision, it's so much harder to navigate the real world. And honestly, just like Barbie, we need guides in our lives to help us navigate those pressure points that we inevitably run into on our own journey. Now, finding those guides isn't always easy. And unfortunately, we often resist the idea that we might benefit from them, right? We have this narrative that we have to figure everything out for ourselves. But it was so clear in the movie that Barbie could not have had the perspective that these individuals brought, right? Weird Barbie had seen this before, so she knew what to do. Barbie hadn't. That sometimes our guide has to have seen things before, right? Gloria, the America Ferrera character, had the perspective of what life was like in the real world because she was living in the real world. And Barbie didn't have that perspective. So it would have been impossible for her to see the implications of the patriarchy as someone who wasn't living in that environment, right? Ruth Handler had the perspective of, hey, I actually know the whole point. I'm the one who brought you into existence. I really have deep wisdom here that I can impart if you are ready to be quiet and pay attention. And I think often, right, there are guides, spiritual and otherwise, with the depths of wisdom that come only from that place. So recognizing that we need guides and that we can humble ourselves to leverage them at various points and they can accelerate our journey, to me was like a glaring theme in this movie. And the third big takeaway I had was that satire really makes it easier to see the ocean we're swimming in. You've probably heard that metaphor of like, if you're a fish and you're in the ocean, you don't even know you're in water. It's just all you know, right? This is the environment you're in. So you don't know that there are creatures living on land, right? Breathing air and not living in this water. And our world is a lot like that. And I think the movie did an exceptional job of illustrating this, that the world that Barbie and all the Kens, right, were living in, and Alan, we can't forget Alan, that they were all living in Barbie world was the only world they knew. And therefore, all the ways that it worked, all of the kind of operating systems and rules about how that world functioned, they didn't really understand that there were any alternatives to that. And we're just like that in the real world, right? We are living in an environment where we often haven't questioned, how did we get here? Why is it this way, right? What could the world look like with some degree of change or some kind of shift? And sometimes it's really easy to be sucked into thinking this is the only way it could ever be. We just haven't gotten enough distance from it to examine it. Satire is that gift. Right? Whether it's George Orwell's 1984 or any, piece of satire, our ability to use satire to really illustrate the ocean that we're swimming in is so powerful. So you look at something like Ken's, submissiveness and his complete absence of identity in any way other than in relation to Barbie. It's so overplayed as satire that we can finally see it in ourselves. We can see, oh, they are showing us that this is how we behave. The infighting among the Kens, right? It's portrayed as a literal war scene in the movie, very over the top, but it mirrors our own infighting, our own competition among women, which takes our eye off of the ball, right? And prevents us from doing anything as a collective. We're not cooperating when we're competing. And that, of course, was illustrated with the constitutional vote in the movie. I thought there was another one, like Ryan Gosling's character, Ken, had this very kind of scantily clad wardrobe, right? He was bearing his abs all the time in the movie. Even if he's wearing a big fur coat over it, he's still showing off those abs. It was so obviously distracting. Like, I think everyone I've talked to who walked out of that movie was like, yeah, what about Ryan Gosling and those abs, right? But that is how women are portrayed in media all the time, right? We're constantly revealing some body part, which is distracting from the performance. It's distracting from their intellect. It's distracting from other elements of their character, right? We're so fixated on the spotlight that's been placed on their body that we almost can't connect with the rest of them as a character. And did you even find yourself asking, are those abs even real? I'm embarrassed. I did ask myself that question. And you don't have to think too hard to see the connection to what female actresses go through all the time, right? So satire shows us the ocean that we're swimming in. It just makes it easier to see it. It puts it like in Technicolor. In the end, the Barbie phenomenon, both the dolls over the decades that we've known them and the movie this summer, it has a duality that I think is really important, right? We can enjoy being girls, playing dress up and imagining all the things that we can do with our lives in various professional pursuits. And we have the right to be our truest selves, flaws and all, releasing any allegiance to some rigid ideal and giving ourselves permission to create the lives that we have imagined for ourselves. That's an idea I've been behind for a really long time. And that's an idea that I hope you are behind as well. And if it takes a Barbie movie taking over the summer to really bring that to the forefront of our consciousness, for us to really see what's possible when we release ourselves from these unrealistic expectations and embrace like the trueness of who we really want to be, taking that creative lens and applying it to our own lives. That's what I want for all of us. That's what I want for you. And that's what I want for myself. And listen, if you are new to the Brilliant Balance podcast, I would love it if you would subscribe to the show. That's really easy to do from wherever you are listening today. And then come follow along on Instagram. We have 2 separate places. You can go to brilliant_balance or follow me at @cskolnicki. And I would love to connect with you there. Definitely hit me up with a DM if you have your own ideas or insights that you took away from the Barbie movie that you'd like to share. I would love to hear yours as well. Okay, that is all for today, my friends. Until next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.